Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another Shamshir Sound video. My name is Ali Nadem. In today's episode, it's going to be all about analog. So we want to make an analog type of sound from massive, from scratch. And before we jump into it, guys, make sure you guys smash up that like button. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe and the notification bell because I'm going to be giving away this project and everything here in the video description. So check that out if you guys want to download it. So to give some context here, this is not going to be good for someone who has no idea what like an analog synthesizer is or synthesizers in general. This is coming from a place considering you have some understanding of synthesizers and the digital synths and just working your way around them. But when I think of an analog synth, I think of different temperature characteristics, you know, the room temp, is it cold, is it warm? That can affect the characteristic of the sound. You have, of course, the circuitry where you're playing notes and like maybe one note or one sound is not the same as the other. So that creates different sonic quality. You know, one sound is never the same. We have different elements where the human player is playing, and when the human player is playing, like the notes are not quantized, the note has a bit more groove, a bit of delay. So there's all these different elements in analog synths that give it a more of a human characteristic. So everybody, I think, have their own interpretation of analog synths, but here we're gonna come from a place of giving it more human characteristic, more movement, more groove, more randomness. And we're gonna talk about 5 tips to really go hard with this one and give it kind of a bit more of a analog type of feel. So let's jump right into it, guys. I'm gonna hit File, New Sound. And what I'm gonna do here, I wrote down here 5 notes. So we're gonna talk about first the virtual analog. So if you guys don't know, Massive has these 2 right here called VA. So these are the virtual analog wavetables. And so I would recommend working with these. I haven't researched into this deeply, but it produces a sound that sounds more analog. It sounds a bit warmer. It sounds a bit thicker. And a lot of times I'll use Saw Square Wave 1 or 2, but for the purpose of this tutorial, let's use the one that they've modeled to kind of emulate analog, hence the name VA, virtual analog. So there's 2 types. There is the VA sync, and this sync button, think of it as almost like a pitch as you drag it down. Okay, so now we're kind of at the default. It almost sounds as if this sounds like the same. And then we can go between saw and pulse with the sync also affecting it. So you can go between the 2. We have the PWM, where this one is a bit different because there's pulse and saw, and the pulse width affects just the pulse, but it doesn't affect the saw. So the saw is unaffected, but you could mix in an amount to maybe mix a bit of a pulse with a certain amount of pulse width, and depending on what the vibe is. So we're going to go with something simple. We're going to go with the saw. All right, so very simple. I'm going to give it some body by adding another one below it, -24. All right, now we got that juicy bass. So I'm going to add a bit of EQ just to give it a bit of crispiness. So now we've tackled the first tip. Now we're moving on to random trigger. So random trigger is going to be this guy right here, trigger random. And the nice thing about trigger random is that basically it's just like the other macros, but it's going to trigger a random value from the point to the end point. So each time I press the knob, sometimes it'll be completely static, sometimes it'll be the full amount. And the nice thing is that when you put trigger random on different elements, you're going to create a bit of randomness, a bit of movement with your track. So we're going to add it, but not to the amplitude. I'm going to first add a filter on here. Let's go with low pass 4. All right, sounds cool. And let's go ahead and add trigger random. Let's clear this vibrato, don't need that, to the resonance. Just a small amount, nothing crazy. We're going to change this to a mono, right there, monophonic. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to add trigger random also to the release. just a tiny bit. And again, this is going to trigger a random value from nothing to just there. You set the min and max. Okay. And what we're going to do now is I'm also going to put trigger random. I think I'm tempted to put it on the sync, but I'm going to put it on this instead. So it's almost non-existent with the wavetable, but tiny, and it's all about these small additions. So we're going to probably come back to random trigger, add a bit more, but for now, let's focus on number 3, which is LFO automations. And so the LFO automations are powerful because what we can do is we can take something like number 5, whichever one you want, and we can do like something like this, where maybe we go upwards. Or we can even do it like this. One will go downwards, one will go upwards. And we're going to create a bit of this like movement with the pitch. So what I'm going to do here, let's just go extreme to see what it's doing. Doing a bit of this weird kind of tremolo vibrato type of thing. But what we're going to do, I'm going to double click and bring it back down to just maybe like 0.1. I'll do minus 0.1 and I'll do plus 0.1. Cool. Let's add a bit more crisp. And let's add trigger random to the high shelf. Just a tiny boost. Okay, let's try the low shelf. And now let's add a bit of white noise. And what we'll do with the white noise is we'll also add trigger random there as well. Very subtle, but again, these random elements are making each note play different. A random value for resonance being boosted, a tiny minuscule amount for the wavetable, tiny minuscule amount for the noise being boosted with the amplitude, and the high shelf EQ. So we're building the structure for creating something with more movement. Let's add a bit of feedback to give a bit of body. So we're going to try adding Bitcrush before the filter. So we went to routing and we're going to put insert 1 before. Only a tiny amount. I don't want to drastically change the signal yet. I'm going to also go to a drive. I'm thinking about putting some sort of drive on here, maybe classic tube. Reduce the attack for this. Let's go ahead and also add maybe a top layer. So we're going to use the same thing, VA sync, turn it on. I'm thinking either 0 or plus 12. Same thing with this. I'm going to put LFO 5. Here I'm going to do minus 10. Let's try that, minus 0.1. And what we'll do is I'm gonna try maybe an LFO on the sync. Let's try trigger random. I like it in the middle between pulse and saw. It has the harshness, but it has this kind of juiciness from the saw. Saw waves are very pleasing to the ear. Saw waves are just a classic. I always go to them. Always. I think every song I've made has a saw wave. So here we're just seeing if we can add a little bit more character before we start adding the newer elements to making this even a bit more movement, bit more analog feel. So what we can do, let's make this a bit more interesting. We're gonna now focus on piano roll, and we'll make a simple melody. The reason I want to do this is because I want to create a cool melody with a pluck, like a low pass pluck. And what we'll do is we'll also trigger random the opening of it. So it'll kind of open a bit. Sometimes it opens more, sometimes it's a bit less, like low pass, sometimes it's more low pass. Let's go with D sharp. All right, so we have a cool melody. Let's go ahead and just, we'll loop this melody. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna open up this low pass filter, and we're gonna also add the trigger random, give a little bit of spice to it. And after that, we're gonna show you guys what we're gonna do with the pitch. We're gonna add a little bit of pitch pluck. So now we're gonna assign envelope 1, just quick, very fast, very decay that ends very soon, so that we can get just a quick pluck at the beginning. All right, so I like where it's going right now. The next step for tip 4 is going to be regarding delay. We're going to use this, and it's kind of a bit overlooked. A lot of people don't realize the power of delay, and it directly ties into groove, because when you add delay, what it does in massive is that it moves it a bit ahead of the grid. So that way, instead of a note being played, even if you have the note quantized on piano roll, it'll play a bit of a delay. Think of it as just like a pre-delay. So what we'll do is we'll just throw in some percussive loop. All right, so I just threw in a kick, a snare, and I just sidechained this with kickstart. Let's check it out. So let's give this a bit more flair before we wrap things up. I want to just give it a bit more grunge, a bit more kind of grit. And let's see if we can open it up maybe with dimension expander, maybe increase the width a bit. Before we do that, let's just add a bit more EQ. Really nice. I like where this is going. Keep in mind, when you open up dimension expander with the dry, wet, and the size, you want to back down the gain because it gets louder when you make something wider. So reduce the gain. And I put on macro 5 here. What I'm thinking about doing is I want to make like a low pass kind of cutoff automation. And we are just going to create an automation clip for that. And I kind of want to open it up. So I'm just going to open it up like so. I want to see what it sounds like when it kind of opens up over time. This is kind of reminiscent of like a Dead Mouse vibe or something. Fantastic. What we're going to do now is we're going to focus on the delay, how I said. So pay attention to what I do here. You can do it also in the effects with the, I believe it's called simple delay. And we'll do that. You can also do it in the envelope setting itself, but let's just do it as an effect because it's actually simpler. So you want the dry wet all the way up, and you basically crank up the time to a point where it's not too delayed, because if you crank this up way in front, it'll be scattered to the right way too much. So let's have a listen. I like it there at 6, gives it a tiny bit of delay. And again, these things are so subtle, but all these subtleties add up together. All these small things, it's the micro things that you do that all add up. And I'm happy with the EQ. I'm happy with everything here. To wrap things up, what we're going to do is also we want to focus on the groove. So think back to what I was saying about analog synths. You know, when a guitar player, the best guitar player, when he's playing, there's always going to be rhythm. You know, when a piano player plays the piano, he doesn't play every single note at 80% and quantized. That little bit of human element, how it's always going to be different, is what gives it that vibe. It gives it that juiciness, you know what I mean? So what we're going to do here is we're going to try just kind of moving some of the notes a bit. So I'm going to hit none for the magnet, Control A. I'm thinking of moving everything a bit forward, but that would not be the same. That'd do the same thing that what we just did with the delay. So I'm just going to move like just a few notes. Let me just try moving the kind of alternating notes. And again, I'm just holding shift as I left click. I'm thinking maybe I'll move this note just a bit like that. All right, tiny bit. We kind of trimmed it off, and let's see what this sounds like. You guys can take this a step further by messing around with some of the other automations as well. You can really take a lot of power by modulating with the control filter. You can do some crazy stuff with this, and I really need to get into this, and I'll do another video in the future. And also the velocity. I don't use this. I believe this is after touch. I believe it's for like a pitch wheel. But the velocity also, you can map it to velocity. But we're going to try and keep things a bit simpler for this tutorial, and I'm really happy with the overall sound that we've gotten from this. Let's just take a quick look. We haven't used the phase oscillator, but by all means, if you guys want to use a phase oscillator and create some crazy extra grunge, please be my guest and do so. I'm going to add a bit more glide to it. Alright guys, so that's a wrap for this video. We're going to have one final listen. Very cool, reminiscent of deadmau5, and all those small things that we did creates a lot of movement, subtleties. Each time a different note is playing, it's going to add a random boost to noise, a little random boost to this, a little random boost to LFO of the low pass, little boost to just small things, and all these small things add up to make more movement. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Go ahead and download this patch, this preset in the video description. I'll let you guys download that. Just check it out below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to smash that like button and smash that subscribe button, because I got some more juicy tutorials lined up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.